I'm Dominic Francis, and this is Unit 2 Organisation's Behaviour Assignment 2. So within this PowerPoint, we are going to be talking about the different leadership styles and the effects of organisations and how they change over time, the application of different motivational theories within a workplace, and the usefulness of motivational theories for team managers, the nature of groups' behaviour within organisations, the factors that may inhibit or promote development of effectiveness and teamwork within organisations, and the impact that technology has had on organisations and their functioning teams. First one is explaining the nature of different groups and their behaviour within organisations. A good example of this is looking at the army and how many different people join at different ages. So the difference with this is you can have members who are between 16 to 18 years old who will be more young, useful, and have a different mindset to those who joined up when they're older, between their 20s and 30s. They'll have different years of experience, so this means that they will have different aspects on how they would do things, different levels of discipline, as well as just a way of dealing with the stress and how to power through. You can maybe also see is rankings of hierarchy affects the nature of how groups behave. So for example, as someone is a recruit, they would obviously be quite submissive to everyone higher to them, but as soon as you became an officer, they would likely be more dominant, assertive to what they wanted to do. This would make them more likely to be confident in what they're doing and show their hierarchy in the hierarchy, but that will also increase the higher up you go, so go from officer, captain, general, so be it. The positives of the perspective views is every generation will have a different way of approaching a situation. So for example, if you had a group of recruits who between the ages of 19 and 20, so they're quite young, and you had an officer in charge of them who was in their 20s as well, who were quite young, and then you have an officer who's in their 50s and older, both would have a different approach to how they handle the group. The one closest to the age will kind of understand his troop a lot easier because he's close to that age group, so he knows how they think, almost taking like a brotherly role to them, like wanting to push them forward and obviously to get to their level-mindedness. While the older officer would probably take more of a father figure look, so he would try to talk to his troop like he was looking after them. They both would probably be quite strict, but they would take care in their own ways. But they'll both lead them by an example. More likely the one of the fifth who's in his older years because he's had more experience and he has more of that adult, that mentor age group, which will both affect how they approach the situation. Different applications of trying to put forward motivational theories is two main ones I found was Maslow and his Pyramid of Human Motivation, and Vroom's free expertise. Maslow, the Pyramid of Motivation, was made in 1943, and it states there are 5 stages within a pyramid of how you can get people to feel more and more motivated to work harder in the workplace. These points are physiological, safety, love and belonging, esteem, and self-articulation. I'll show you the pyramid here. So, at the bottom, physiological needs. So this is like your basic human needs that everyone needs. That to be like food, water, warmth, and place to sleep. And then you have your safety needs, which is like security, personal privacy, things like that. Then it moves up to belongings and loved ones, which is intimate relationships, friends, love, and couples and stuff like that. He believes that when you pass the basic needs section and then you move on to the psychological, which is belonging and love, and then esteem needs, which is like how you feel about yourself, you feeling accomplished. Once each one of these categories is eliminated, so you've got your basic needs, you'll focus on your psychological needs. And after you've done your psychological needs, you'll go to your self-fulfillment need. And the self-fulfillment need is achieving one's full potential, including like creative activities. So this could be, so if we break it down, A soldier, he's happy to have a home, so officers will provide him comfort, so they would give him housing, support for his family, and then that gives him security, so he knows he's safe, he can focus on what he wants, and then he knows that his loved ones are safe, so he can carry on, and he's got a sense of security for his family, he's going to be looked after, and then he has esteem needs that he's wanting to push forward, carry on with his service, and wanting to get the job role he wants. And then self-degradation would probably be him wanting to get a promotion, so possibly if he was a regular squaddie, he would want to go to officer or higher up. Going back, we have, talking about Vroom, he had 3 different factors that employees would think about during their commitment to work. And all of these have different stages to them. So, So valence is the outcome of expecting something. So it's a little long graph here. So your valence would be the outcome that you're expecting to happen, while the expectancy is the act that will result in an outcome, and then the instrumentality is the motivation that's going to push you. So let's say the outcome is you need to get to an area quicker, like 30-mile march, and then after that the expectancy would be, what would be the result of the outcome? The result of the outcome would be they've passed, but then the motivation would be, if they pass it in a record time, they may get leave for a more extended period of time, so they could probably go home for the weekend instead of have to stay at barracks. And there you go. The next ones, what we evaluate in these is the benefits of the Maslow one is the workforce feels more engaged, and they want to work harder because they feel like they're being taken care of, they don't have as many worries, so they support themselves more, and they complete their tasks more effectively. And this is further improved by the services doing the support schemes within the army, which is like the 4 key delivery pillars, which is support, housing, family benefits, and also public support. While Vroom, it makes you want to work harder to avoid either punishment and get a reward. It makes you feel proud for succeeding, the reward based on your good work, and it makes sure employees put in as much effort as they can. The impact of different services and the leadership styles have in organisations in periods of change, plus the factors that may promote or inhibit development of effective teamwork. I found 2 great examples. We had Shackleton, which was a sailor and explorer who wanted to find the North Pole, but he got stuck in Antarctic. And what happened was his ship was going through in 1914, and it got stuck between 2 iceberg peaks. The iceberg peaks, they were stuck there for 2 years, but through the whole time, Shackleton remained calm. He was able to talk to all of his team and always had a plan. He didn't stress out, freak out, or even show it to his team. He was very good at also making sure that his fellow sailors would not lose morale, because if they lost morale, they would have caused them to not focus on what they were doing and surviving and getting their jobs done. So he did many ways of doing this, was either having one-to-one talks, doing experiments with them to keep them interested, their minds engaged, and even playing football. As we see here, he set up a football game round on the ice, and it was just a little way to let the guys let loose, and instead of worrying what the situation they were in. Pardon me. But he also adapted to changing situations very well. So when their food shortage was low, they were scavenging for food, but they also ended up sadly using their working dogs as food as well. And other situations like that. And he would also send scout teams to find land and carried on. They eventually did get home with all the teams surviving, because they had a massive hope and trust within Shackleton, because he was able to keep a calm persona and keep hope up. Next is Tuckman's 5 stages. Tuckman believed that all teams and groups that come together would have can be made with these 5 stages. The first stage of a group meeting and becoming a great team is you get them to forming, and that is you get them acquainted with each other. They understand who they're treated as strangers, but they try to understand, get rid of formalities and proceed as members to get to know one. He also believed that the next stage would be storming. Storming members means that they would communicate, but they'll have their own views, and they'll be individuals. And at this point, there's still going to be some conflict between them because they're still getting to know each other and understand how the way they think. This is the toughest one, but after this, hostility should be eliminated, and it moves on to the next stage, which is norming. The norming is when people feel. Norming is when people feel part of a team and they realise that they can achieve work if they accept other viewpoints. So they're getting more understanding of each other, they're respecting each other's views, while also not being disrespectful. And then the next one is performing as a team. So this means after they've understood what they're doing, they work well with each other, trusting the atmosphere that they're in, knowing that they could put their faith in their abilities of others, and also trying to get to a goal. And understand, and also setting up a bit of a hierarchy amongst the group. So who do they think is best to lead them? So again, Shackleton would be an example. That everyone believed in him. He was really well with his team. They thought he was the best one to lead them after he did started off. And then last stage is a jury. The team. This is when the team conducts an assessment of the year and implements a plan for transitioning roles and recognising members and their contributions. So this is like evaluating each other and seeing what they've done well, what could do better for next time, and congratulating everyone for what effort they put in. Another way of management of getting teams to work well is PESM. And whenever you look, and it's broken down into the 6 stages. You've got political, economic, social/cultural, technology, legal, and environment. Political stands for stability of a government, the potential of changing legislation and global influences. So you see this within the army. If they are, for example, what you see most recently is them changing laws within allowing women no longer being just supportive roles in the military, but now also having a frontline role. That's changing the political idea of, years before women weren't allowed to join the military, and now they changed it. And it's also trying to keep relations alright with other people, with other units. It's also when they go to some countries and they're safeguarding, some soldiers won't carry a weapon when they're meant to be on there for peaceful duties. Even though it's at risk for them, they need to do it to show that they are there for peace, because you wouldn't believe someone's there to keep the peace while you're having a firearm. Then you've got economic, which is the economic growth, employment rates, inflation rates, monetary policy, and consumer confidence. So this would probably more or less be, where's the money going? Would it affect the team drastically? So would there be enough money for equipment? So would their lives be put at risk if they had inferior equipment? Would they have enough money to recruit more members of the team if need be? So this would be the army recruiting more and more applicants. So it's making sure the army doesn't get cut too small, which we are going through at the moment. The next stage is social and cultural. This is a massive one within the services because different groups have different ways of reacting with each other and also how they grow along. So if you see an army soldier would probably call the eating area a mess hall, because that's the nickname, while a Royal Marine or a naval officer will call it the galley. Different forms of talking because of different ways of how they are used to and how they socialise with each other. So you'll find that the Royal Marines are very harsh with each other because it's one of the toughest things to get into, and you've got to have a tough, thick skin. Or the army could be probably more understanding. RAF is got a bit more civilian background to it, so they will be less hurtful with their banter. Then the next one is technology. So this would be international influences, changes in the information and technology, and the take-up rates. So again, as technology changes, we need to find other ways to adapt to it. So one of the biggest things is the Marines are still quite old-fashioned at how they do all their training and also how they go past, while the Army and the RAF have been taking on many forms of technology advancements and have been using it to their effectiveness for the teams. Most recently, the Army and the RAF have both been using drones, and instead of having real pilots, using that to monitor areas, and you go and take that into the firefights, which will go on to my next slide. And last two are legal. Legal is taxations, policies, employment laws, industrial regulations, and health and safety. So for health and safety, they're not going to deliberately put their workers at risk if they can avoid it. Of course, it's a job where danger is present, but it's what you're meant to do. It's when you're at home, when danger should not be an option, is when they need to be worried. Regulations and employment laws, this could be like for the Quality Act, making sure they're not disregarding people just based on either their sex, gender, and so any of the Fair Treatment Acts and the 9 protected characteristics. If they do this, it could affect motivation of a team working well together, and it could cause disarray between the group. And then the next one is environmental. So these are regulations and restrictions of an area and attitudes of customers. So again, this would be within, like, if when our soldiers were in Afghanistan, we were there to train the soldiers and not actually there to cause conflict. So the rule was that we were not allowed to fire onto the enemy unless we were fired at, because we were there mainly to safeguard the area. Last slide, which was talking about technology, the impact it can have. The main example I had was drones, and with this you can see many benefits and negatives for technology in general, but we're going to stick to drones. So the benefit first is the creation of drones means that pilots are less at risk of harm, so you're not actually having the pilot flying around in the area that could be in danger, while also they're easier to train, so you don't have to have a pilot in the plane knowing all the control switches and everything like that. Instead, they know how to use a joystick and the remote control, which makes them a lot less stressed at work, while it also means they can work at more ease. Then the benefit of this as well is it can be managed by a team. So instead of a team, one pilot being flying around an area, getting tired and fatigued and head home and then cut his search down, he can leave controls to another member who would take over the job, keeping the drone in service. And lastly, is also they're more accurate when they're in the firefights because they're removing the human error. And the last, moving, it's not all benefits, we are moving down to negatives as well. For example, it could cause pilots to become desensitized to violence. So let's say, because you're flying this vehicle and you're shooting at enemies, but the enemies may not appear like enemies because they're on a monitor, so it feels less real to you. So almost like a video game. So so they may not be as likely to feel empathy. So it can cause friction between teams if one of them, like if a member can feel empathy for those that they're attacking, and while another is looking at his targets. The next one is that it's difficult to switch off a mindset. So unlike a pilot when you're in the military and you're flying, and then you stop, you go back home on tour, drone pilots will probably be in an office at home, and they'll be piloting, and then they'll go back to the house. Might be difficult to switch off from drone pilot then back to family civilian, which then could cause friction at home and it could cause friction with teams, so they could be quite aggressive, be desensitized and not feel emotion. But also opposite to being desensitized, it can cause PTSD, so they could be traumatized for what they've done, they've seen it all the time, and they may see things that they wouldn't have seen if they were piloting a normal plane. And lastly, you've got open to hacking, which is a massive thing, and it can cause situations of 9/11, terrorism, and other self-harm. Thank you, and those are my references.